So tell us, friends, what did you think of our last story, The Rejected Omega and the Alpha King? Wolf Face Crown. Did you enjoy the mix of romance and drama, or would you like to hear more action and intrigue in the next chapters? This was only part 1 of the saga, and part 2 is coming soon. Sparkles. So make sure to like this video and subscribe. It really helps us keep creating these stories, and your support means the world to us. See you in the next episode. The sky above Loria burned red with fire and ash. Smoke curled from the ruins of the once proud estate, drifting into the cold night air like dying prayers. The banners of House Loria, silver wolves embroidered on black silk, lay trampled in the mud, stained with blood and soot. The clash of swords had ended hours ago, yet the echoes of battle still haunted the valley, carried by the restless wind. Isolde of Loria stood at the edge of the courtyard, her thin hands clutching the edge of her torn dress, her body trembling though she forced herself not to cry. At 20 years, she should have been a lady of some standing, seated at long feasts with goblets of wine and laughter echoing across the hall. Instead, she watched her father kneel before the conquerors, his hands bound, his proud face streaked with sweat and blood. The soldiers, wolves of the Iron Crown, surrounded him, their golden eyes gleaming in the torchlight. They were not ordinary men. Their presence pressed down on her chest, suffocating, their very breaths carrying the scent of predator. Each bore the sigil of the Alpha King, a crown encircled by wolf's fangs. The executioner stepped forward. His armor clinked, black steel glistening with the damp of night. He did not look at her father as a man but as prey already fallen. Sir Aldrich of Loria, the herald intoned, his voice flat, emotionless, as though reading from some ancient script. You stand condemned of treason against His Majesty, King Alaric Vaynor, sovereign of the North, the South, and all lands bound by fong and claw. You conspired with rebels. You raised arms against the crown. You spilled loyal blood. Her father lifted his chin. His once dark hair was streaked with gray, his jaw shadowed with days of imprisonment, yet his voice did not falter. I raised my sword not for treason but for justice, for a kingdom where men are not slaves to the wolves' hunger. Murmurs rippled through the soldiers, low growls vibrating in the night. One stepped forward, baring teeth, but a single lifted hand from the commander silenced him. The herald ignored the words. Your line is forfeit. Your land seized. Your blood cleansed by blade. A blade, long and glimmering, was unsheathed with the sound of finality. Isolde's breath caught in her throat. Her mother stood beside her, frail hands gripping Isolde's shoulders so tightly her nails dug through the fabric. Do not look, her mother whispered, her voice trembling with a terror she could not hide. For mercy's sake, child, do not look. But Isolde could not obey. Her storm-gray eyes lifted, locked on her father. He turned his head just slightly, just enough to find her in the crowd. And in that single look she saw no fear, only sorrow and something like apology. Isolde, he whispered. She read the word on his lips though no sound reached her through the roar of blood in her ears. The sword fell. It was over in a heartbeat. A spray of crimson against the mud. Her father's body collapsed, lifeless, to the ground. His head rolled to one side, eyes open and empty, staring at nothing. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some spat, some laughed, some bowed their heads in grim acknowledgement. But all of it blurred before Isolde's vision as the world seemed to tilt sideways. Her knees buckled, but her mother held her upright, whispering prayers through sobs. The herald's voice rose once more. Let this be the fate of all who stand against the Wolf King. From the shadows beyond the torchlight, a figure moved. Taller than the rest, draped in a cloak of black. His presence bent the air itself around him. Even from a distance, Isolde felt it. The weight of his authority, the chilling force of his aura. Soldiers dropped to their knees as he passed, their eyes averted. Alpha King, Alaric Vayner. She had never seen him before, yet she knew him instantly. Every peasant child, every noble daughter, grew up on stories of the Wolf King. How he tore through armies with teeth and claw, how he ruled without pity, how his gaze alone could make grown men collapse in submission. His hair was dark as midnight. His face carved in sharp lines that might have been beautiful if not for the hardness etched into every angle. And his eyes, golden, unblinking, ancient, fell on her like a brand. For a moment Isolde could not breathe. Then his gaze slid past her, as though she were nothing, less than dust beneath his boots. He turned to the commander at his side. Burn the estate. Scatter the ashes. Let no wolf or man speak the name of Loria again. A torch was hurled into the manor. The dry timbers caught instantly, flames leaping skyward. The great hall where she had once run laughing as a child now roared with fire, its stained glass windows shattering under the heat. The wolf banners curled, blackened, and dissolved into ash. Her mother crumpled, her cries drowned beneath the crackle of fire. Isolde stood frozen, the heat licking her skin, the smoke stinging her eyes. And yet, through the chaos, she thought she heard something else. A whisper, soft as wind in the reeds, curling through the smoke. From shame shall rise the queen of wolves. Her eyes widened, heart hammering. She spun, but there was no one there. Only darkness and flame. Perhaps it was madness. Perhaps grief. Or perhaps it was something older. Something woven into the blood of her line. Something no executioner's blade could cut away. The prophecy took root that night, buried deep in the ashes of Loria. And though Isolde did not know it yet, her life, the life of the trader's daughter, was far from over. It had only just begun. The city square reeked of sweat, smoke, and desperation. The sun hung high, glaring mercilessly down on the stone marketplace, where dozens of chained souls stood trembling upon rough-hewn platforms. Men and women, some no older than Isolde herself, lined the stage. Property waiting to be bought, bodies treated like beasts of burden. Isolde's wrists were bound in iron shackles, the rough edges rubbing her skin raw. She no longer flinched at the pain. She had grown used to it in the days since she'd been dragged from her ruined home, sold from caravan to caravan like unwanted livestock. Her once proud dress was now little more than a gray rag, its seams torn, its fabric caked with dust. Her hair, once braided with ribbons of silver thread, hung loose and tangled across her shoulders. She kept her gaze lowered to the ground, her storm-gray eyes hidden beneath her lashes. Better to appear meek, unworthy of attention. Better to vanish into nothingness. The auctioneer's voice cut through the stagnant air, sharp as a knife. "Next lot," he bellowed, his tone half boredom, half cruelty. "Isolde of Loria, female 20 years. Literate, trained in healing, knows herbs and birthing work." A murmur rose from the crowd. Loria. Even stripped of lands and banners, her family's name still carried the weight of scandal. Children whispered it in nursery rhymes. Adults spat it as a curse. The auctioneer grabbed her chin, forcing her face upward. "See here, gentlemen. Decent teeth, all limbs intact. A little thin, but she'll fill out with proper feeding." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Her cheeks burned, humiliation searing hotter than the sun. She wanted to wrench her face away, but she remembered the lesson learned long ago. Resistance only invited cruelty. Better to stay silent. "Starting bid," the auctioneer declared. 50 silver. Silence. He tried again, his confidence wavering. 40 then. 30. A man stepped forward from the crowd. His clothes were rough-spun, his hands scarred from labor. He sneered up at her as if she were already chained in his fields. 20. The auctioneer winced but nodded eagerly. "Do I hear 25? Another man snorted. "She's Wolf Baron. What good's a healer when wolves mend themselves? She'll barely last a winter, someone else jeered. The first bidder chuckled. 15 then. That's all she's worth. Isolde closed her eyes, forcing her breath steady. Perhaps it would not be so bad. Perhaps she could endure. Work hard, keep silent, survive. That had been her mother's last advice before the fever took her. Survive, no matter the cost. 15, the auctioneer echoed weakly, searching the crowd for more. The square grew still. Even the hawkers in the far stalls fell silent. The air itself seemed to thicken, heavy with something unseen, something dangerous. Then it came. A voice. Deep, commanding, final. 100 gold. The words sliced through the marketplace like steel through flesh. Gasps rippled outward. Merchants dropped to their knees. Whispers surged like wildfire. My king, someone breathed. No, it cannot be. Isolde's heart hammered as the crowd parted, people bowing, prostrating themselves against the stones. She dared to lift her eyes, just once, against every instinct of survival. He was there. The Alpha King. Alaric Vayner moved through the throng like a predator through grass, each step measured, each motion rippling with restrained power. His hair was dark as raven's wings, falling across a face chiseled in sharp lines of stone. His eyes, those impossible golden eyes, glowed like molten fire beneath the sunlight. His presence filled the square until even the bravest men seemed small. The auctioneer stammered, his face as pale as parchment. 100, your majesty. You doubt my word. Alaric's voice was cold as a winter wind, silencing all argument. The bidder who had mocked her stumbled backward, color draining from his face. But my lord, I had first claim. You had nothing. Alaric's gaze flicked to him, a single glance heavy with disdain. Leave. The man nearly tripped in his haste to obey, vanishing into the cowering crowd. Alaric mounted the platform. The wooden boards creaked beneath his weight, but no one dared move. The air quivered with unspoken fear. Isolde's breath caught as he stopped before her. So close, she could see the faint scar along his jaw, the controlled precision in his every movement. Power radiated from him, not merely strength of muscle, but something older, deeper, primal. You are a healer. His voice was low, almost soft, yet it struck her harder than any blow. Her lips trembled. She forced them still. Yes, my lord. He studied her in silence, his gaze unreadable. Then, at last, he turned away. Rowan, he commanded. A scarred knight stepped forward immediately, bowing his head. Take her to the fortress. Feed her. Clean her. She is mine now. Alaric did not look back as he descended from the platform, the crowd parting like water before him. Isolde's knees nearly gave way. Her world tilted, saved from one fate, thrust into another. The knight, Rowan, placed a heavy hand on her shoulder. His voice was gruff, his eyes as sharp as steel. Rule 1. You do not speak to the Alpha King unless he addresses you. Rule 2. You never meet his gaze. Rule 3. You are property now. Valuable property, perhaps, but property all the same. The words struck like blows, but she nodded, numb. Better property than bones in a field. Better this than the cruel man who had bid 15 silver. And yet, as Rowan led her through the crowd, Isolde glanced back one final time. The Alpha King's retreating form was already swallowed by his soldiers, his cloak black against the burning sun. He had saved her. Not out of kindness, surely. Not for her sake. But still he had saved her. And deep within her, like an ember buried in ash, hope flickered. Perhaps this was her chance. Her only chance. Part 2. The Wolf King's Rules. The road to Iron Keep stretched endlessly, winding through jagged cliffs and forests where even the birds dared not sing. Isolde stumbled on the rough stones, her bare feet bleeding, her thin body aching with every step. The chains had been removed, but she remained surrounded by the king's soldiers, hulking men with eyes that gleamed gold when the light struck them. They moved with a fluid grace that betrayed the beast within, their presence as suffocating as the iron sky above. She tried to keep her head low, but whispers reached her ears nonetheless. Useless Omega. King wasted his gold on that one. Should have left her for the vultures. The words stung, cutting deeper than the rocks beneath her feet. They thought her worthless, and perhaps she was. Yet a small voice inside her whispered stubbornly, "He paid for me. He saw something." On the third day her strength gave way. The world tilted, her vision swam, and she collapsed face first into the dirt. Mocking laughter rang out. Knew she wouldn't last. Can't even walk. Leave her behind. But then silence. Heavy boots approached. She braced herself for a kick, for the cruelty she had come to expect. Instead, strong arms lifted her as though she weighed nothing. The scent struck her first, pine, steel, and something wild, something that stirred the wolf within her she thought long dead. She blinked up through half-closed eyes, and her breath caught. It was him. The Alpha King. He carried her without a word, his massive frame steady, his golden eyes fixed ahead. His warriors fell into a hushed silence behind them, as though even they dared not mock while their king bore her weight. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Shame and gratitude tangled in her chest. She whispered, "Forgive me," but he gave no answer. His grip was firm, careful, almost gentle, but his expression remained unreadable stone. By the time they reached Ironkeep, she no longer knew whether she was dreaming or awake. The fortress loomed like a mountain carved into cruelty itself. Black stone walls rose high into the mist, towers clawing toward the heavens. The gates yawned open, swallowing them into a courtyard where warriors drilled in perfect, merciless formations. Children no older than 10 practiced with wooden swords, their faces set in grim scowls, their every strike precise. No laughter, no joy. Only discipline, as if the fortress itself had leached away warmth. Alaric set Isolde down in the center of the courtyard. His eyes flicked to a stern-faced woman who approached at once, bowing low. Her hair was streaked with gray, her posture rigid, her expression carved of iron. "Edda," the king commanded. "She is yours to train. Feed her. Clean her. Teach her the rules." Edda's hawk-like eyes raked over Isolde, narrowing in disdain. She nodded. "As you command, Majesty." The king turned away, already dismissing her from his thoughts. Soldiers parted for him like reeds before a storm as he strode into the fortress. Isolde reached out without thinking, a small sound escaping her lips. "My lord." A hand clamped down on her shoulder. Rowan, the scarred knight, leaned close, his voice a harsh whisper. "Rule 1. You do not speak to the king unless he speaks first. Rule 2. You never look him in the eyes. Rule 3. You are property. Break these rules, and you will not live long enough to regret it." Her mouth went dry. She nodded once, trembling. Edda seized her arm, dragging her through the fortress halls. Cold stone swallowed her, the torches casting long, cruel shadows. "You think yourself special because he bought you," Edda hissed. "You are nothing here. Less than nothing. You will scrub floors until your knees bleed. You will serve until your hands break. And if you displease him," she smirked, cruel and knowing, "you will vanish into the dungeons like so many before you." Isolde lowered her head, biting back tears. She would not cry. Not here. Not before them. The servants' quarters were bare. A straw pallet, a wooden basin, a single blanket thin as parchment. Edda thrust her inside. "Washington, tomorrow you begin work." The door slammed shut. Alone at last, Isolde sank onto the pallet. Her body ached, her spirit frayed, but still, she pressed her hand to her chest, where the echo of his presence lingered. He had carried her. He had not spoken, had not looked at her as anything more than a burden, yet in his silence she had felt something. Not kindness, not warmth, but something undeniable. And in that moment, for the first time since her father's death, a fragile ember of hope flickered within her. If she must endure chains again, then she would endure them here. For perhaps, in the shadows of Iron Keep, her story was not ending. Perhaps it was only beginning. Part 3: Whispers and Shadows. The fortress of Iron Keep never slept. By day, the clang of steel rang endlessly through the courtyards as soldiers trained in relentless drills. By night, the halls echoed with footsteps of patrols, the scraping of armor, and the low growl of wolves running the perimeter. Even in the darkest hours, the torches burned, casting restless shadows across the black stone walls. Isolde learned quickly that there was no hiding here. Every movement was observed, every misstep punished. Edda, the stern servant mistress, wasted no time setting her tasks. She scrubbed the dining hall floors until her hands bled. She carried buckets of water up endless flights of stairs until her back screamed. She laundered blood-stained tunics of soldiers who never thanked her. When she faltered, Edda's voice cracked like a whip. "Faster, girl. Do you think His Majesty's fortress is held together by your size?" The other servants avoided her. Some glanced with pity, most with contempt. They whispered the name Loria like a curse, spat when they thought she wasn't looking, muttered about her father's treason. Yet every word, every cruel glance, only steeled her resolve. She had survived worse. Still, the loneliness gnawed at her. Nights on her straw pallet stretched endlessly, filled with echoes of her father's last look, her mother's trembling hands, the jeers of the auction crowd. Sleep offered no escape, only dreams of fire and prophecy. It was during her 3rd week at Iron Keep that the whispers began. Why did he buy her? She's wolfless, worthless. Perhaps the king grows soft. No, the wolf of Iron Keep has no softness. The soldiers spoke openly, confident she could not hear. The servants muttered when she passed, their voices sharp as blades. The fortress itself seemed to echo the question, why her? Isolde herself did not know. The answer perhaps lay in the great hall. A feast had been declared in honor of the season's first harvest, and for the first time, Isolde was summoned to serve among the noble guests. She carried platters of roasted venison and golden apples, her head bowed, her hands trembling as she navigated between jeweled sleeves and sharp glances. At the head of the long table sat the Alpha King. Alaric wore no crown, yet no one could mistake his place. Clad in dark leather, his presence was command itself. He did not laugh, did not toast, did not join the revelry. He sat like a shadow among flames, his golden eyes surveying the hall with silent authority. Isolde tried not to look at him, but her gaze betrayed her. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met across the hall. Her heart jolted. His expression did not change, yet something in that gaze pierced straight through her. She quickly lowered her eyes. It was then that Lady Celestine arrived. She swept into the hall in a gown of emerald silk, her platinum hair coiled in elaborate braids. Jewels glittered at her throat, her lips curved in a smile sharp as a dagger. She moved with the grace of a predator certain of her place at the top of the food chain. Isolde felt her approach before she heard her voice. Well, the king's stray. Isolde froze, the tray trembling in her hands. Celestine's eyes raked over her, cold and gleaming. "They say you were bought like cattle," Celestine continued, her voice carrying easily to nearby tables. "And yet here you are, serving at His Majesty's own feast. How fortunate for you. Some women claw their way for years to catch even a glance from him. But you, she smiled cruelly. You need only look pathetic. Laughter rippled among Celestine's companions. Heat flooded Isolde's cheeks. She forced her hands steady, bowing her head. I mean no offense, my lady, she whispered. Oh, but you do, Celestine said sweetly. She plucked a golden apple from the tray and let it fall deliberately to the floor. Pick it up. Isolde hesitated. Around her, nobles leaned in, eyes gleaming, hungry for spectacle. Celestine's smile widened. On your knees. The hall seemed to tighten around her. Isolde's chest burned. Her pride screamed against the command, but her survival whispered louder. Endure. Life. Slowly, she bent to her knees, her trembling fingers reaching for the fruit. The laughter grew. But then a voice cut through the hall. Enough. Silence. Alaric's voice had not risen, yet it carried over every jeer, every whisper. He had not moved from his seat, but his golden eyes were fixed on Celestine, sharp as a blade. The lady paled, her laughter faltering. Your Majesty, I was merely. I said enough. The words left no room for argument. Celestine's smile cracked. She sank into a curtsy, her jeweled hands trembling slightly. As you command, my king. The hall fell into uneasy silence. Isolde remained kneeling, frozen, the apple in her hand. She dared not rise until Alaric's gaze shifted away. But it lingered. For a long moment, his eyes remained on her, unreadable, unyielding. And then, as if nothing had passed, he turned back to his wine. The revelry resumed, though the laughter was thinner now. Later that night, as Isolde returned to the servants' quarters, she found herself stopped in a shadowed corridor. It was Rowan, the scarred knight. His blue eyes studied her with something between warning and pity. You draw too much attention, he said quietly. The lady will not forgive tonight's humiliation. Watch yourself. Isolde lowered her gaze. I did nothing. Rowan's jaw tightened. That's precisely the problem. Sometimes survival means disappearing. You don't know how to vanish yet. He turned away, his footsteps echoing into the darkness. Alone in the silence, Isolde pressed her back against the cold stone wall. Her heart still raced from the memory of Alaric's gaze, the weight of his single word silencing an entire hall. For the first time, she wondered if the whispers were right. Why had he bought her? And why, despite every cruel rule, did he notice her at all? Part 4. The Storm Banquet. The storm arrived at dusk. It rolled over Ironkeep in black clouds and silver lightning, rattling shutters and groaning through the towers like some ancient beast clawing at the fortress walls. Rain lashed against stone, a steady drumbeat that drowned the usual rhythm of the soldiers' marches. The feast would go on regardless. At Ironkeep, not even nature dared halt the will of the king. The great hall blazed with torches and chandeliers of iron, each flame fighting back the storm's shadow. Long tables groaned beneath the weight of roasted boar, spiced pheasants, and goblets of dark wine. The nobles of the realm had gathered, each draped in silks and jewels, their smiles sharpened into weapons, their whispers louder than the thunder beyond the walls. Isolde stood among the servants, a tray balanced in her hands, her heart pounding like the rain on the roof. She tried to focus on her task, pouring wine, carrying platters, but the storm outside seemed to creep inside her chest, crackling with unease. Edda's voice hissed in her ear as she passed. Keep your head down, girl. No mistakes tonight. But mistakes were always waiting. At the high table, King Alaric sat in his accustomed place. He wore no crown, yet he needed none. Clad in dark leather and wolf fur, he seemed carved from the same stone as his fortress, immovable, unshaken even as thunder split the sky. His golden eyes gleamed in the torchlight, cool and watchful, missing nothing. Beside him sat Lord Marius. his crimson cloak a splash of color against the black hall. His thin lips curved in a smile that never reached his hawk-like eyes. Lady Celestine sat on Alaric's other side, her emerald gown shimmering, her laughter ringing too brightly above the storm. And everywhere the nobles watched, weighed, and whispered. The storm grew worse as the night deepened. Wind howled through the arrow slits. The chandeliers swayed. Servants hurried nervously, their steps uneven. Isolde moved among them, careful, silent. She poured wine into goblets, her hands steady despite her racing heart. But as she approached the high table, something pricked her senses. Scent. Bitter. Wrong. She froze, her storm-gray eyes flicking to the goblet set before the king. The wine within shimmered too darkly, a strange sheen clinging to the surface. She knew that smell. She had ground those same herbs once, long ago, in her father's apothecary. Nightshade. A dose masked in wine. Slow, nearly undetectable, but fatal. Her breath caught. No one else noticed. Celestine laughed, leaning too close to the king. Marius sipped his own wine with a smirk. The hall buzzed with careless chatter. And Alaric, expression unreadable, reached for his goblet. Isolde's body moved before her mind could catch up. The tray in her hands clattered to the floor as she lunged forward. In a single desperate motion, she struck the goblet from the king's grasp. Red wine splashed across the table, spilling like blood across silver plates. The hall fell silent. The storm outside seemed to hold its breath. Alaric's hand stilled, his golden eyes narrowing on her. Gasps echoed through the nobles. Celestine's face twisted in outrage. Marius's smile sharpened. She spills the king's wine. Celestine cried. Insolent wretch. Poison, Isolde whispered, her voice hoarse, her knees trembling beneath her. It was poisoned, my lord. Laughter burst from the far end of the hall. The traitor's daughter calls poison where none exists. A desperate lie to save herself. Who would dare poison the Wolf King? The voices rose, anger and mockery swirling like the storm itself. Alaric raised a hand, and silence fell as swiftly as a blade. His golden eyes burned into Isolde, piercing her, stripping away her defenses until she felt laid bare before him. Explain. His voice was calm, cold, impossible to refuse. Isolde swallowed hard. Nightshade, my lord. A healer knows its scent. Clings to the cup still. Please. Her voice broke. Please, I swear it on my life. The hall buzzed with disbelief. Lord Marius leaned forward smoothly. Your Majesty, this is the same girl whose father betrayed the crown. Lies flow in her blood. Surely she seeks to sow chaos. She seeks attention, Celestine added sharply. Shame her as she deserves. Alaric's gaze shifted between them, then back to Isolde. The silence stretched, thunder growling outside the walls, until at last he spoke. Bring me the goblet. Rowan obeyed, setting the stained cup before the king. Alaric lifted it, his nostrils flaring slightly as he inhaled. His expression did not change, yet his eyes flickered, just once, toward Isolde. Then, with terrifying calm, he tipped the goblet, letting the last drop of wine spill onto the flagstones. Where it touched, the stone hissed faintly, smoking in the torchlight. Gasps echoed through the hall. Marius's jaw tightened. Celestine went pale. Alaric set the goblet down with quiet finality. His gaze swept the hall, heavy as the storm. She speaks truth. The silence that followed was deeper than any thunder. He rose to his full height, his cloak falling around him like a shadow. And truth is not welcome among liars. His voice cut like steel. Tonight my hall is shamed. Find the hand that dared lift poison to my table. Find them or face my wrath. Nobles scrambled to their feet, bowing, muttering oaths, their faces pale. Isolde remained kneeling, her hands trembling, the shards of her tray scattered around her. She dared not look up, but she felt his eyes linger on her, just for a moment, heavy with something she could not name. Then he turned away, leaving the hall as lightning split the sky. Later, when the storm had quieted, Isolde sat alone in the servants' quarters. Her body shook, though the air was warm. She had lived. More than lived. She had spoken, acted before the king himself. And he had believed her. She pressed her hands to her chest, whispering into the silence. Why? But no answer came, only the steady beat of rain against the stone. Part 5. The Garden of Secrets. The fortress of Ironkeep was a citadel of shadows, its walls built for war, not for beauty. Yet even within this stronghold, secrets grew in places no one expected. Isolde discovered the garden by accident. She had been sent to carry herbs from the stores to the healer's chambers, her arms aching with bundles of dried sage and willow bark. The corridors of Ironkeep were endless mazes of stone, some leading to cellars that smelled of damp earth, others twisting toward towers where the wind shrieked through arrow slits. In her exhaustion, she turned down the wrong hall, her bare feet carrying her to a heavy oak door half hidden behind a tapestry. Should have been locked. Most doors in Ironkeep were. Yet when she pressed it lightly, the iron latch yielded. Cool air kissed her face, scented with something she had not breathed in months. Green things, living things. She stepped through. The space beyond was unlike anything she had imagined could exist inside Ironkeep. A courtyard enclosed by high walls, invisible from the outer fortress, open to the night sky. Moonlight spilled across beds of herbs and wildflowers, their silvered leaves swaying gently in the evening breeze. Roses climbed trellises of black iron. A pool reflected the stars, rippling where koi glided beneath the surface. It was a sanctuary. Her storm-gray eyes widened, her heart aching at the sight. For the first time since Loria's fall, beauty reached her senses untainted by cruelty. She inhaled deeply, the fragrance of lavender and thyme stirring memories of her father's apothecary, nights when she had ground herbs at his side, when her world had not yet burned. Her knees weakened. She sank onto the edge of the pool, her reflection trembling with the water. A tear slipped unbidden down her cheek. She pressed her sleeve to her eyes, ashamed of her own weakness, whispering, "Why here? Why hide this in a fortress of stone?" A voice answered, "Because some things cannot survive in shadows." Isolde froze. She turned slowly. He was there. Alaric stood at the garden's entrance, his cloak falling around him, his golden eyes burning like twin flames in the moonlight. He had shed his armor, dressed instead in dark tunic and leather, yet his presence was no less formidable. He watched her silently, unreadable. "My lord," her voice caught. She scrambled to rise, but her legs faltered. "Stay." His command was soft, but it rooted her in place. He stepped into the garden, each motion measured, predatory, yet somehow gentler than the storm she had seen in the great hall. His gaze swept over the herbs, the roses, the quiet pool. His hand brushed against a lavender stalk, fingers lingering. "This place," he said at last, "was my mother's. She believed even wolves needed peace. When she died, I sealed the door. 4 years it remained untouched." His voice carried no outward emotion, yet Isolde sensed the weight beneath it. Grief long buried. She lowered her gaze. "And yet, you opened it again." His eyes returned to her, piercing. "Because I saw you look at herbs as if they were more than weeds. Because I wondered if you would find your way here." Her breath caught. He had noticed her. In the stores, in the hallways, in moments when she had thought herself invisible. "You saved me, my lord," she whispered, unable to stop the words. "At the banquet." You believed me when no one else would. His expression did not soften, yet something flickered in his eyes. You spoke truth. Few dare in this place. Truth is dangerous, she said quietly. And lies are poison, he replied, his tone like steel. He paused, then added, You are your father's daughter. That will never change in their eyes. Yet, you are not him. Her chest tightened. For so long, she had carried the shame of his name like a chain around her neck. To hear even a fragment of absolution, especially from the king, was almost unbearable. I do not seek to be him, she said, her voice trembling but firm. I only seek to be useful. For the first time his lips curved, not into a smile, not truly, but into something less severe than stone. He stepped closer, his presence filling the air, his golden eyes searching hers. You are useful, he said simply. The words were plain, but to Isolde they struck like thunder. Her throat tightened. She lowered her head quickly, whispering, Thank you, my lord. A long silence stretched between them. The garden held its breath. Finally he turned away, his cloak stirring the lavender. Return to your quarters, Isolde. You will need your strength. Shadows in this fortress grow restless. My lord, she asked softly, but he did not answer. By the time she blinked, he was gone, leaving only the whisper of roses in the moonlight. That night, as she lay awake on her straw pallet, the image of the garden glowed behind her eyes. Not just the flowers, not just the peace, but the man who had brought her there with his presence. The Alpha King, cold, ruthless, feared by all, had revealed a corner of his soul, however small. And in that secret garden, beneath the silver light of the moon, something had shifted. A thread had been woven, fragile, dangerous, unseen by others, but real. Part 6, Shadows of the Past. Days in iron keep blurred together, a cycle of work and watchfulness. Isolde's hands were raw from scrubbing, her back sore from hauling, yet she moved with quiet determination. The garden's memory lingered with her, giving strength where otherwise none would exist. Each night she returned to her pallet with a faint scent of lavender still in her mind, as though the flowers themselves guarded her from despair. But the fortress did not forget who she was. Traitor's daughter, the servants whispered when she passed. Bought like cattle. The soldiers' laughter echoed down the corridors. The king grows soft. He keeps a pet, not a servant. Even the children in the courtyards mimicked their elders, throwing pebbles and chanting cruel rhymes. Isolde bore it all in silence, though the words scraped deeper than any whip. One evening, while carrying water through a dim corridor, she heard voices, low, urgent. She stilled, pressing herself against the cold stone. The king grows restless, one voice muttered. She recognized it instantly. Lord Marius. His sharp tones carried even in whispers. The girl is dangerous. The banquet proved as much. Softer, mocking voice answered. Lady Celestine. Dangerous. She's nothing. A pale little shadow clinging to scraps. Let her be, Marius. Her suffering is entertainment enough. You are a fool, Marius hissed. Do you not see how he looks at her? He listens to her. That is peril. Influence grows in silence, and I will not have another Loria shaping his mind. Isolde's breath caught. Another Loria. Her father. Her fists tightened on the water jug. Celestine's laughter rang lightly. Oh yes, Aldrich of Loria. The noble knight who dared defy the crown. Tell me again, Marius. What was his treason? Marius's voice lowered, but she strained to hear. He sought to unseat the king. Claimed the wolf's bloodline was tainted. Spread lies. Rallied men to rebellion. Lies. Celestine's tone dripped with mockery. Or truths you buried. A dangerous silence followed. Then Marius spat. Careful, Celestine. My secrets keep you as well. Footsteps retreated, their voices fading. Isolde pressed her back against the wall, her heart thundering. Her father, rebellion, lies, tainted bloodline. Was this the truth? Or another web spun by men like Marius, twisting justice to their own ends? She remembered her father's last look on the field of execution. Sorrow, yes, but no fear. No guilt. Only apology. Her throat ached. What if he had been innocent? That night, she crept back to the garden. The door was still unguarded, as though fate itself wanted her to return. She sank among the herbs, the moonlight painting her pale skin silver. Her hands trembled as she plucked sprigs of lavender, crushing them between her palms, letting the fragrance calm her racing heart. "Father," she whispered into the night, "what did you die for? And why does no one speak the truth?" The pool rippled with wind, but no answer came. She was not alone for long. Talking to ghosts. Isolde startled, nearly dropping the herbs. Rowan stood at the garden's edge, his scarred face half hidden in shadow. His eyes, cool and steady, fixed on her. "My Lord Knight," she murmured, rising quickly. "I did not know. You shouldn't be here." His tone was flat but not cruel. He stepped closer, his hand brushing the lavender as if testing her trespass. "This place is not for servants." Isolde lowered her gaze. "Then punish me if you must. But it is the only place I can breathe." Rowan's jaw tightened. He studied her in silence for a long moment, then shook his head. "You are braver than is wise." Her chest tightened. Or perhaps more foolish. He almost smiled, though it flickered and died quickly. "Perhaps." He turned to leave, but something in her desperation broke her silence. "Rowan, tell me, do you believe my father was a traitor?" The night froze. Slowly he faced her again, his eyes sharp as steel. "That question is dangerous. Please." Her voice cracked. "They whisper lies in the halls. I need to know." Rowan exhaled, his shoulders heavy. "I fought at Ironfell. I saw your father ride against the king's banner. That much is true." Her breath faltered. "But..." Rowan's gaze softened slightly, a rare crack in his armor. "I also saw Marius whispering in the ears of commanders, saw orders twisted, saw truths buried in silence. Treason is not always treason, girl. Sometimes it is only the word the victor uses." Her eyes burned. "Then he may not have been guilty." Rowan's lips pressed thin. "History will never say otherwise. Not while Marius holds the king's ear." A heavy silence stretched between them. Finally, Rowan added quietly, "If you value your life, bury these questions. Do not speak them again." And with that, he left, his cloak vanishing into the shadowed hall. Isolde sank back to her knees among the herbs, tears slipping down her cheeks unchecked. Her father's truth was buried, yet her heart whispered louder than Marius's lies. Perhaps she was a fool to cling to hope. But she could not stop. Because if her father had been innocent, then everything had been stolen not just from him but from her. And she would not let the truth remain buried forever. That same night, as she drifted into uneasy sleep, she dreamed of wolves circling her bed. Their golden eyes glowed, their teeth bared, yet they did not strike. Instead, they whispered in voices like wind through trees. "Blood remembers. Shadows lie. Seek the truth, and you will find it." She woke trembling, her heart pounding with something that was not quite fear. It was purpose.